The apartment was silent. The air still carried the faint scent of perfume and alcohol. On the sofa, a woman lay motionless, her head wrapped tightly in a plastic bag sealed with tape. Around her, a black wig, high heels, and an untouched glass glimmering under the dim light. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no chaos. Everything looked disturbingly calm. To the investigators who arrived that night, it seemed like the scene of a strange accident. But as they looked closer, the silence began to speak, and it whispered of deceit, greed, and a carefully constructed lie. What appeared to be a private tragedy would soon unravel into one of the most shocking cases in modern Spain, a story of betrayal, identity theft, and a friendship that ended in murder. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers: 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. Ana Maria Paez was born in 1972 in a quiet town near Barcelona. She grew up in a warm and loving household with her parents, Antonio and Ana, and her brother, also named Antonio, to whom she was especially close. The family lived a peaceful life built on affection, stability, and mutual respect. Those who knew Ana often spoke of her honesty, ambition, and gentle heart. She was the kind of person who saw the best in everyone, sometimes to a fault. A bit too trusting, her family would say, but always out of kindness, never ignorance. As a child, Ana was surrounded by friends. Her open, cheerful nature made her instantly likable, and she had a creative spark that showed early on. In school, she stood out for her discipline and talent. She loved fashion and art, often spending hours sketching clothes she imagined one day bringing to life. Her drawings were detailed, full of emotion and precision, proof that this wasn't just a hobby, but a calling. Even though her parents worried about the competitiveness of the fashion world, Anna's determination never wavered. After graduating from high school, she pursued design professionally, earning her credentials and refining her craft with the same dedication that defined her from a young age. Her hard work paid off when she was hired by a textile company as a designer. It was a dream come true. She loved her job, gained the respect of her colleagues, and built new friendships. With her steady salary, Ana lived comfortably and independently. Every morning, she would take the train from her hometown to Barcelona, a routine she followed for years. Her life seemed beautifully on track: a promising career, a loving partner, and a close-knit family that adored her. In 2000, Ana met Carlos, the man who would become the center of her world. Their connection was instant, and over time, their bond only deepened. After several years together, they decided to move in and start building a life side by side. Their families grew close, holidays were spent together, And by 2008, after nearly a decade as a couple, they were solid and happy. Anna, then 36, continued to thrive at work and was deeply in love. But beneath the calm of her everyday life, a tragedy was quietly waiting, one that would soon shatter everything. On February 19th, 2008, Anna followed her usual morning routine. She caught the train to work, dressed with her typical elegance, and went through her day as always. That evening, she had plans to meet her friend, Maria Angeles Molina, known to everyone as Angie, for dinner. She told Carlos she might be home late, possibly around midnight. But that night, Anna never came back. Carlos tried calling her several times, but there was no answer. At first, he thought nothing of it. Anna sometimes stayed over at a friend's house after a long evening out. But when morning came and there was still no word from her, the unease began to grow. It wasn't like Anna to disappear or to forget to call. He reached out to her parents and brother, hoping someone had heard from her. No one had. Anna's brother recalled their last conversation. She had mentioned nothing about staying out overnight. Something felt off. Desperate for answers, Carlos called her workplace. Maybe she had gone straight to work and lost her phone, but his hopes vanished when he learned she hadn't shown up at all and hadn't called in sick either. This was completely unlike her. Anna was responsible, punctual, and considerate. Everyone who knew her agreed. Something was terribly wrong. Carlos and the family went to the police to report her missing. The investigation began immediately. 2 days later, on February 21st, authorities received a chilling phone call from the owner of a vacation apartment. A cleaner had discovered something horrifying: the lifeless body of a woman. Police rushed to the scene. The apartment had been rented only a few days earlier. Inside, the air was heavy and silent. On the sofa lay a naked woman, her head covered with a plastic bag sealed tightly with tape. It was the moment that confirmed their worst fears and marked the beginning of a dark and shocking case that would haunt Barcelona for years to come. When investigators examined the apartment, several details immediately stood out. Near the body, they found a pair of black high-heeled shoes, a black wig, a half-empty bottle of alcohol, and a single glass. Strangely, Anna's clothes and handbag were nowhere to be found. Without them, identifying the victim was difficult. The rest of the apartment appeared immaculate. No signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, nothing to suggest a violent confrontation. Even more unsettling, investigators found no fingerprints anywhere. Once the plastic bag was carefully removed from her head, the cause of death became clear: asphyxiation. At first, police considered the possibility of a sexual game gone wrong, a tragic accident during a private encounter. But soon, that theory began to unravel. The plastic bag had been wrapped far too tightly for someone to have placed it on themselves and then failed to remove it. Why hadn't she tried to tear it off? And why was the rest of the scene so deliberately clean? The missing clothing and personal items pointed toward another person's involvement, perhaps more than one. When forensic tests revealed traces of semen on the victim's body, that suspicion became certainty. The immediate goal was to identify the victim. It didn't take long before the pieces began to fall into place. The apartment had been rented under the name Ana Maria Pius, the same woman who had been reported missing just days earlier. For the police, it seemed the case was beginning to make sense. But for Anna's loved ones, nothing about it did. Her family refused to believe she had died by accident or during some kind of dangerous sexual practice. Carlos, her longtime partner, insisted that Anna had been loyal and deeply committed to their relationship. Her family described her as cautious, private, and not someone who would take reckless risks. The theory of an accident felt impossible to accept. Still, police had to explore every angle. There were even whispers that Anna might have been secretly involved in escort work or other activities to earn extra money. But that idea was quickly ruled out. Anna's salary was good, her financial situation stable, and if she had ever faced difficulties, her family would have helped her without hesitation. Investigators turned their attention to finding the two unidentified men linked to the scene. Both Carlos and Anna's brother told police that on the night of her disappearance, Anna had plans to meet her close friend, Angie. The two women had worked together years earlier and had remained in touch. When police reached out to Angie, the 40-year-old appeared shocked by the news. She claimed that Anna had canceled their dinner plans at the last minute. According to her, Anna had asked her for a favor, to tell Carlos that they had gone out together if he called looking for her. Angie admitted she didn't ask questions. She assumed Anna was seeing someone secretly and didn't want her boyfriend to find out. It wasn't the first time Anna had made such a request, she said. This revelation painted a disturbing picture. Had Anna been leading a double life? Investigators began digging deeper into her personal affairs. Her phone records showed nothing suspicious, no unusual calls or messages. But her bank statements told another story. On the morning before her death, a withdrawal of €600 had been made from her account at 9 a.m. The problem was that Anna had been at work at that exact time, confirmed by several co-workers. To make matters worse, whoever made that withdrawal had presented Anna's identification. Whoever it was, they had to look remarkably like her. Police requested the surveillance footage from the bank, hoping for answers. When they finally viewed the recording, they saw a woman entering the branch. She had short dark hair and wore clothes similar to what Anna typically wore. Her build and posture could easily fool someone who knew Anna only casually. But when investigators showed the footage to her family, their reaction was immediate. The woman in the video was not Anna. Carlos studied the image closely and felt a chill run through him. The resemblance was undeniable, but something was off. The woman looked eerily like someone he recognized, Angie, Anna's friend, the same woman who claimed to have been elsewhere that day. Police summoned Angie once again for questioning. When she was shown the footage, she denied it was her. She told investigators that on the day Anna disappeared, she had lunch with friends, spent the afternoon buying a Cartier watch for her boyfriend, and later went to Zaragoza to collect her mother's ashes. When police checked with the funeral home, her account appeared to hold up. But as the investigation deepened, new evidence began to surface, and it painted a very different picture. Detectives showed the photograph from the bank's security footage, the mysterious woman withdrawing money using Anna's ID, to the owner of the apartment where Anna's body had been found. The owner didn't hesitate. That was the same woman who had rented the place days earlier, introducing herself as Anna. She had dark hair, possibly a wig. But what reason would Anna have to wear a wig that looked almost identical to her natural hair? The realization hit investigators hard. Someone had been impersonating Anna, using her name, her documents, and even her appearance. As they delved deeper, they uncovered a disturbing pattern. Between 2006 and 2008, several loans and leasing contracts, 9 in total, had been taken out in Anna's name, amounting to more than €100,000. Her family had never heard of them. Carlos, who knew Anna's finances intimately, was adamant she had no debts and no loans. The woman who had applied for the credit described herself as single, living with her parents, earning over 7,000 euros per month and working as a design manager. None of this matched the real Anna, who lived with Carlos and earned a modest salary as a designer. If Anna hadn't taken the loans, who had? And where had all that money gone? Her family hadn't seen any large purchases or sudden wealth that could explain it. But the financial deception didn't stop there. Investigators also discovered several life insurance policies in Anna's name, together worth over 800,000 euros. The beneficiaries were two women. The first was a woman named Susanna Bascuñana, someone Anna's family had never heard of. When police tracked Susanna down, she was stunned. She denied knowing Anna, Angie, or any connection to the policies. It seemed someone had also stolen her identity. The second beneficiary, however, was a familiar name, Maria Angeles Molina, Angie. The deeper police went, the clearer the picture became. The address listed on all the fake loan applications was Angie's. Soon after, her boyfriend Miguel came forward with a shocking discovery. Anna's passport and ID were hidden in their home, documents Anna had never reported missing. Whoever had used them clearly had intimate access to Anna's life. The evidence was mounting fast. Angie had motive, opportunity, and access. She had impersonated her friend to obtain money, created fake insurance policies that would make her rich if Anna died. But had she really killed her friend? Angie still clung to her alibi, insisting she had been in Zaragoza that day. However, investigators found that she had indeed traveled there in the morning to collect her mother's ashes. But Anna's planned meeting with her was in the evening. That gave Angie enough time to return to Barcelona before nightfall. Phone records confirmed the suspicion. Around 8 p.m., Anna's phone connected to the network near the area where she would later be found. Angie's phone was also active, just some feet away. And then came the final blow. Forensic testing revealed that the dark wig found near Anna's body matched the one worn by the woman in the bank footage. Hairs discovered inside the wig belonged to Angie. The illusion was shattered. Angie had been there. She had impersonated Anna, drained her finances, and set up life insurance schemes that would benefit her after Anna's death. But there was still one lingering mystery. The DNA from two unidentified men found on Anna's body. Who were they, and what role had they played in this deadly plan? In March, police searched Angie's apartment. What they found was chilling. Copies of every forged loan document, Anna's identification papers, a small bottle of chloroform, a blonde wig, the same one used when impersonating the other stolen identity, Susanna. On her computer, investigators found searches about sedatives and about clubs where men sold sexual services. Following the digital trail, police visited one such club. And there, they uncovered a disturbing truth. Angie had approached two men and made them a bizarre offer. She paid them 100 euros each, not for their company, but for something far stranger. She wanted their semen in a cup, claiming it was part of a bet with a friend. The men, confused but tempted by the money, agreed. They had no idea their DNA would later be found on the body of a murdered woman. The image of Angie that began to emerge was one of cold calculation and deception. Her real name was Maria Angeles Molina. Born in Zaragoza in 1967, she had spent her life weaving lies about who she was. She told people her father was a wealthy notary or a prosecutor, that her family had aristocratic roots and influence. But the truth was much simpler and much less glamorous. Her father was a taxi driver, her mother, a homemaker who made extra money sewing. They lived comfortably, but far from the elite world Angie invented for herself. From a young age, Angie showed an obsession with wealth. Money wasn't just something she wanted, it was the measure of her worth and the compass that guided her life. As a teenager, she longed for designer clothes and expensive possessions, believing they defined who she was. She surrounded herself with wealthy friends, openly looking down on anyone who didn't match her standards. Those who knew her described her as arrogant but also intelligent, persuasive, and capable of making people believe whatever story she told. At home, her parents tried to satisfy her growing demands for luxury, even when it stretched their modest income. Angie excelled academically and could have pursued any career, but she was convinced her future would come through marriage, not effort. After finishing school, she began appearing with new clothes, jewelry, and an increasingly lavish lifestyle, though no one knew exactly how she paid for it. Rumors spread that she was dating rich men who financed her expensive tastes. When she turned 20, Angie joined a group of affluent friends on a trip to Gran Canaria. She slipped easily into their world of champagne nights, designer handbags, and beachside parties. To maintain the illusion, she claimed her parents sent her a generous allowance, even though she often relied on others to pay her bills. It was in 1988 that Angie met the man who would change her life, Juan Antonio Alvarez, an Argentine businessman 10 years older than her. Juan was kind, serious, and family-oriented. He wasn't the type who sought luxury, but Angie's charm captivated him. She told him the same grand stories she'd told others, that her father was a high-ranking prosecutor, that she came from a prominent family. Juan believed her. He admired her sophistication, unaware that it was all an illusion. Angie claimed her parents disapproved of their relationship because he wasn't wealthy enough. Juan, wanting to prove himself, worked harder and showered her with gifts. Their wedding was small, without family present, something Juan explained away as part of the ongoing tension with her parents. They settled into married life comfortably. Angie convinced her husband that her father had cut her off financially, leaving Juan responsible for her upkeep. In 1992, they welcomed a daughter. For a while, life seemed stable, but the truth eventually surfaced. Juan discovered that Angie's so-called aristocratic family was nothing of the sort. Her father was a taxi driver, her mother a homemaker who earned extra money by sewing. Feeling betrayed, Juan confronted her. The arguments became frequent, but despite his anger, he still loved her and refused to end the marriage. As the years passed, Juan's disillusionment deepened. Angie's constant trips to Barcelona made him suspicious. By the mid-1990s, he believed she was having affairs. He even hired a private investigator, and soon after, he began considering divorce and custody arrangements for their daughter. Angie, however, refused to let go. Then, in November 1996, everything changed. Angie traveled with her daughter to Barcelona for what she called a short vacation, returning on November 22nd. Unable to open the door to her home, she entered through a window and found her husband dead. Juan's body was slumped naked against the bed, pale and lifeless. The scene was eerily calm. There were no signs of violence, and the house was locked from the inside. The autopsy revealed traces of cleaning chemicals containing phosphates, substances often found in household detergents. Police ruled it as a probable suicide. Juan's death left Angie a large inheritance, but she couldn't collect the life insurance payout since suicide voided the policy. Within 2 months, she sold their property, moved to Barcelona with her daughter, and cut all contact with Juan's family. In her new life, Angie lived as though nothing had happened. She drove luxury cars, rented a villa in Gran Canaria, and secured a position in a textile company, the same one where Anna would later work. Angie managed the human resources department, giving her access to personal data from every employee. By 2006, Angie's lifestyle began to crumble. She was fired from her job and started living beyond her means, draining her inheritance and forging loan documents under Anna's name. Even without a steady income, she continued to project an image of wealth, dating various men, lying about her background, and manipulating everyone around her. By 2008, Angie's greed had escalated into something far more sinister. Investigators believe she devised a plan to eliminate Anna, whose identity she had been using for years. They theorized that she drugged Anna's dinner with sedatives, invited her to the rented apartment, and once Anna lost consciousness, suffocated her, staging the scene to look like a sexual accident. In March 2012, Maria Angeles Molina was finally arrested for the murder of her former colleague, Ana Maria Paez. The case combined identity theft, fraud, and premeditated murder. The Barcelona High Court found her guilty and sentenced her to 22 years in prison, later reduced to 18 years by Spain's Supreme Court. Yet the story didn't end there. In 2016, investigators reopened the case of her husband Juan's suspicious death. They discovered that before his passing, Angie had already enrolled their daughter in a new school, transferred ownership of vehicles, and repeatedly called his office to ask about his well-being. Traces found in his stomach hinted at poisoning, but without sufficient evidence, the case was closed once again. In March 2025, while on temporary release from prison, Angie was rearrested, this time for allegedly planning another murder-for-hire scheme. Authorities never revealed who her intended victim was, and Angie refused to testify. As for her daughter, little is known. Her whereabouts remain private, shielded from the shadow of her mother's crimes.